morning. I'm super pleased to have Allison Baum Gates on the show today from SemperVirens Capital. Today is a great day because it's actually two things. It's International Women's Day, and it's also the day that she's releasing her book, Breaking into Venture. I'll include the link for her book in the section below. And if you like this interview and other interviews like it, please smash the subscribe button below. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Allison. Long time no speak. I'm very pleased to be talking to you today. I've not talked to you in about 3 to 4 years.
Way too long.
It has been way too long. I don't think I've talked to you since you got back to the U.S. So, yeah. Well, welcome back. One.
Thanks.
But yes, a very late welcome back. So tell the show, welcome to the show, and tell the show kind of 10, 15 second background about yourself.
I'm Allison Baum Gates. I'm a general partner at a venture capital fund called SemperVirens Venture Capital, where we invest in technology for the future of work. I am also an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, a lecturer at UC Berkeley, and the author of Breaking into Venture.
And actually, the book just came out today, so this is breaking. This interview is breaking.
Very timely.
Tell us a little bit more about the firm and what makes your VC firm different.
SemperVirens is focused on technology that's impacting the employer-employee relationship. So we invest in workforce technology, healthcare technology, and financial technology that's impacting that relationship. What's unique about our model is we run a community of end buyers for the portfolio companies that we're investing in. So we actually run a group of over 100 HR leaders, senior HR leaders at publicly traded companies, amazing folks like the CHRO of UPS, the CHRO of Visa, ADP, BNY Mellon, some of the biggest employers in America and globally. And we work with them to understand how the technology we're investing in fits into their workforce. So it's that kind of insight and network that gives us the ability to access great investments, analyze them in real time, and then add value and help with go-to-market distribution after we've invested.
Cool. And so there's the kind of that you've been thinking about like future work and that theme actually for a long time, ever since the beginning. And so I'm going to kind of tie that in with also your book, Breaking into Venture, because you talked about the essential theme about actually that book is being an outsider, right? An outsider turn VC, shares kind of, I think the theme of the book is sharing how to take risks. Let's talk about like you being an outsider when you started your career in Hong Kong with General Assembly, and how you actually went from General Assembly to Fresco with Titus. And I'd like to kind of mention that Titus is like this 15th belt black belt, right? So with this tough exterior, right? So how did you manage to like do jiu-jitsu, right? And convince him from your non-traditional background, I think you were teaching at General Assembly, you had 2 courses, to actually being, founding the firm with him.
Yeah, I started my career on Wall Street in New York. And so that was my first lesson in being an outsider in an industry that was being changed by technology. And technology was changing our business. A lot of jobs on the trading floor were being replaced by algorithms. The implementation of technology meant that margins were getting smaller and how much money you could make in the industry was changing as well. And so I kind of decided at that point, hey, I really don't want to be disrupted by technology. I want to be on the side of the technology doing the disrupting. And so ended up pursuing a career in the tech sector and was an early employee at General Assembly, a venture-backed tech company in the education space, training professionals in digital skills. So in a lot of ways, solving the problem that I had, helping professionals transition from traditional career pathways into technology career pathways. And so helped build and launch our programs in New York. We raised several rounds of venture funding. I ended up moving to Hong Kong to launch our business in Asia. And as I was going deep on the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Hong Kong, And I was at the same time seeing how our venture investors were impacting our business. I became really interested in understanding more about this world of investing in startups and who was doing it, what they were looking for, and how they were influencing the way these companies were being built. And so started running some classes around angel investing at General Assembly in Hong Kong. And that's how I initially got introduced to Titus. Part of what I talk about in the book is how to build a relevant network and how to find what you're looking for. And that means giving people a reason to help you and being really explicit about what you're looking for. And so when I decided to run classes, I said to everybody that I knew, hey, I'm looking to meet angel investors. I'm looking to meet venture investors. And I was recruiting them to General Assembly to teach these classes. And Titus was one of those people, and his class was just incredibly well attended, super popular, because he was, as you said, a jujitsu master. No, he was, I think he would, if he were on this podcast, he would correct us that it's karate.
It is. I'm sure he would.
It is karate, but very zen and very educational about how he was thinking about building his portfolio and how that impacted his decisions. So I learned a ton from him, and everybody else did as well. The class was incredibly popular. And I thought, wow, how can we do more of this, right? Any entrepreneurial mind says, do more of what's working. So I went to him and pitched him on doing a longer form education program to train more people in venture capital and angel investing. And he basically was like, I don't know. He was like, I don't want to do that. But he was thinking about starting a fund. And at that time, he asked me to join him. And I was a little confused. I thought, what do I know about venture? I wanted to teach people, not do it myself. And he said, you know what? Venture capital and angel investing is all about finding amazing people that are great at what they do and convincing them to come work with you. And I always remember that because you don't have to be in venture capital already to have that skill set. And he saw that in me, and I'm really lucky for that.
Okay. And then you kind of, you were with Fresco ever since the beginning in Hong Kong. And then kind of, I wouldn't say shortly after, maybe let's say 2 or 3 years afterwards, then you kind of went to Japan because I think you had some LPs there. You wanted to help the portfolio go to Japan and continue on the outsider theme, right? Japan is the ultimate kind of insider, outsider type of community, right? And so talk about that and breaking into that Japanese startup scene.
Japan is one of the most closed societies in the world. So in some ways, it was really good practice for how to break into and succeed within any industry that's exclusive, especially one like venture capital. What I learned in Japan, and one of the most important things that I took away for my career more generally, was living in Japan. You can do everything you can to understand how it works and why and what are the rules and how to be respectful and how to speak the language, both literally and figuratively. But no matter what you do, you cannot become Japanese.
Yes.
And so
it's either you are or you're not. There's
exactly.
No right.
Exactly. And even those that are Japanese, if you don't have the right heritage, you might not be Japanese enough. And so I just learned at that point that I could never win at that game. And so I needed to embrace being different. And that became my competitive advantage because in Japan, I had access to Silicon Valley. I had access to international startups and insights and relationships and partnerships. And because I was able to bring that to the table, that's what made me valuable. So instead of wasting all my time trying to figure out how to fit in, I should just get comfortable standing out.
That's kind of weird in the sense like one would think that, I mean, if I'm Asian, so it's like it's kind of easier for me to kind of maybe think that about blending in because but for you were always kind of different. But I didn't know you tried to fit in. In fact, I didn't know that. And I think it sounds like basically once you kind of embrace the fact that you're never going to fit in, things just became a lot smoother?
Definitely. I do speak some Japanese and spent a lot of time working hard at it to try to interact in the local language, but ended up receiving the advice, which I'm really grateful for, which is once you start speaking Japanese, you're subject to the rules of speaking Japanese. And especially for women, there are very strict expectations around how you're supposed to act and what you're supposed to say and what you're supposed to do. And that it's actually way better to not even go there and embrace my otherness and my difference so that I could operate according to my own rules instead of a set of rules that I might think I understood, but didn't really.
Yeah, it's thousands of years of culture and customs that I think even the Japanese may have trouble trying to figure that out. And then
Absolutely.
there's a chapter in the book where you talked about reading the air, kiyoyameru.
Hmm.
You want to talk a little bit about reading the air and kind of those lessons?
I love that there was a word for this in Japanese. And when I was working with our local business partners there, they really emphasized the ability to understand the context in which a decision was being made within a Japanese organization. And that concept of reading the air, understanding what's happening beyond your eyesight, and what is happening behind the scenes is critical to understanding how to get something done. And that happens in Silicon Valley as well. People don't talk about it as much, and there isn't an eloquent, poetic term for it. But I call it, in some ways, just back channeling. Where, I think a lot of founders meet a VC and they give them their pitch and they think that we're just making a decision right then and there about, is this a good company or not a good company? But what happens behind the scenes is that whoever the VC trusts, whoever's on their team, whoever they see as experts in the field, they go and ask, what do you think about this company? Have you heard about this company? And that's the subtle influencing that happens outside of the room, that if you're smart and you know what's happening and you know how to navigate it, you can set yourself up for success by surrounding that conversation with a bunch of other little conversations that will feed back to the VC and impact how they think about you or perceive you or, think about the opportunity. But you have to do that work, and it's way beyond what your pitch deck looks like. And I learned that lesson in Japan, and I do it now when we're fundraising as a venture fund. I do it when I'm trying to influence the ability to make an investment in a company that I love. I do it when I'm convincing my partners at my fund to make an investment that I believe in. But you have to understand those dynamics and gain them to your advantage if you want to get things over the line, because nobody's going to tell you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Like, so the Koreans actually have something as well, and they call it nunchi, which is
Mm.
eye air. Yeah, I believe it's kind of eye air, and so I also remember like meeting certain LPs in Japan, and it was like you had to do meetings to prepare for meetings, and then I think then they were
Yeah,
like meetings to prepare for those meetings, and then it's like it kind of moved like a
right.
house of cards, like and remember we would talk about it, and also during the meetings things weren't explicitly being said. And I remember one time I actually had a conversation, and it seemed like nothing was moving. And then afterwards, my Japanese partner was like, "That was a very good meeting." And then I was like, like, I was
Was
like, "How
it?
or why?" And then he's like, he raised his eyebrow or something very subtle, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, interesting." And obviously, I think the Valley is not, and American culture isn't that subtle, but I think your
Mm.
principle and your framework is there's still on a lot of conversations and subtlety built into any decisions and any conversations, any relationship, and you have to really work on that equally, if not more so, than the actual pitch itself.
Absolutely. And Sarah Smith, who is one of the other investors, incredible woman, who I interview in the book, and she shares an incredible story about a time when she gave a term sheet to a founder building a business that she was really excited about. She was at Bain Capital Ventures at the time, and the founder accepted her term sheet and was really excited to work with her. And then she didn't hear anything for a couple days. And she thought, this doesn't seem right. And one of the board members at that business did not like the term sheet, didn't like the terms, didn't like her firm, and essentially blocked it and prevented it from happening. And she learned a really hard lesson around, you think you're just talking to a CEO and a founder and that they're making a decision about what firm to work with. But there's a board behind them that has a lot of say in that decision too. And if you are trying to get something over the line, you need to know the other board members. You need to convince them that you're the right partner as well. And that's where I think venture capital is so fascinating, because part of the challenge I'm trying to solve with this book is that it is an exclusive industry. And we need more types of people in venture capital if we want technology to fulfill its promise of democratizing opportunity and not just benefiting one very small group of people. But exclusivity in venture capital is a feature and not a bug. And that's because these tight networks of people that know each other and trust each other and are able to get deals done, it's built that way for a reason. And so if you're an outsider and you're trying to figure out how to navigate that, you have to know that every time you pitch a founder or you give a term sheet, there's a board as well that you need to influence, and you need to be proactively building those relationships so that when the time comes, you can leverage them.
Interesting. And today is actually International Women's Day. And so kind of bridging from that kind of last conversation about female VCs breaking in and exclusive, this being a kind of an exclusive type of industry, like tell us about kind of being an outsider and any kind of thoughts that how female VCs can be better, or at least position themselves and break into and really expand, I think, the number of female VCs in the industry.
Part of the mission of the book is to help more women and anyone really from an underrepresented background break into the industry. It's hard to do. And, I was just sharing with a female founder who reached out recently talking about her challenges kind of raising capital, and that she felt like she didn't get very much support in her investment process from female VCs, and that was surprising and disillusioning to her. And what I told her was, what a lot of female VCs won't tell you is that they're not empowered internally at their firms. And they are silenced in investment committee meetings, or, my experience at a big institutional fund was nobody could explain to me what I needed to do to succeed and get a promotion to be a general partner. And I asked a million different ways and nobody gave me a straight answer. And those are some of the challenges. It's like, if you don't know what you need to do to succeed, or you don't know how something actually works, if nobody's sharing that information with you, you don't know how to game that system. And so that's why so many women leave big venture funds, or they're there and they don't have the power to write big checks. And they won't tell you that. If you're a founder pitching them, they're not going to be like, you know what, I really love your business. I'd love to support you, but nobody listens to me and I'm probably going to leave in a year. Because then you're just completely handicapping yourself. Then you'll surely not be successful if you admit that you're not absolutely crushing it. And so it creates this weird echo chamber where it feels like female founders aren't getting support, but I think from female VCs, but that's because female VCs don't have the ability to succeed at the game that they're playing. And that's really what I'm trying to solve with this book, is not just talk about those challenges because they're bullshit. And that's not how it should be. But we have to get more women into venture and keep more women in venture if we're going to have more companies started by women and funded by women as well. So that's part of what I'm trying to do with the book.
And I think part of, I like what you kind of said in your experience in Japan, is that you kind of embrace that outsidership, right? In the sense that, like, I'm never going to blend in, right? And accepting that. And then, because I see a lot of VCs now, they do podcasts, right? So I was actually interviewing an not AI, but a Seattle-based investor, Yohei Nakajima. And he is like a geek. He built so many things on ChatGPT, and he's embracing that piece and saying that's what makes me different. And that's our thesis, and that's how we think about the world. And so That's how we invest, right? And I really, and it seems like the more you embrace what you are, because at the end of the day, as a VC, what are you selling? You're selling your view of the world, right? You're not selling widgets. We're not selling products. We're selling a thesis. And so it seems like it's one of my theses, that the more you embrace what you are and your thesis, and the more you're clear about it, and whether it's outside or inside or whatever it may be, I think the easier you can find LP alignment as well.
Definitely. I agree.
Last question. Being an outsider definitely has its pros. But now that you're kind of insider, you're now in the Valley, and you've worked a number of years there. But it sounds like actually being an outsider was beneficial for you, right? There's a lot of things that you learned from that process as well. How do you continue kind of having that kind of mentality and making sure that you're not kind of comfortable sitting on the inside? And I'm going to combine that with a question that I usually also ask as well. If you kind of did this all over again, what would you kind of have done differently? I mean, you went all across the globe. You went from, New York to Hong Kong to Japan, and now in the Valley, and then pretty soon back on the East Coast. Anything you would have done differently?
I would have absolutely embraced being an outsider earlier. I think that being an outsider is a competitive advantage because you can often see things from a perspective that people from inside the industry or the group or the community can't see. As an outsider, you are asking, why is it done that way? Does that really make sense? Who's in charge here? And you have the ability to examine those power dynamics, those connections, those networks. And I think that's really powerful. And I don't think I could have gotten into VC, honestly, if I hadn't taken the path that I had around the world. And there weren't very many venture capital funds in Asia when we started Fresco. And so being different was an advantage there. And if I had stuck around here, it would have been very hard to get a job at a venture fund, without an MBA from Stanford or Facebook or Google on my resume. And so I think being an outsider is the only reason why I am where I am here. And I am always aiming to, I guess, stay an outsider because I think we need to build more bridges from venture capital into other industries, communities, and bring more types of people into the space because we're at a really critical moment. I mean, everything happening with AI, ChatGPT, what kind of business model powers some of this technology going forward is going to change all of our lives forever. And we need different types of people around the table sharing how those different business models might impact them or their communities or their livelihoods. And so I think it's more important than ever that we have more outsiders on the inside of this industry, or else we're all going to be living with the consequences.
We'll be run by our AI overlords.
We will.
Okay, that's all the time that we have. So thank you again for coming on the show, and it's really, really good catching up with you.